right. How many hours did you work last week?
I'm afraid to say for fear that I might be over my DOT hour restriction. But I did work a 21-hour day. It was my new record.
It is your new record. It's amazing how much you worked over the Christmas holidays. I'm exhausted just listening to it. What about you?
Yeah, I'm exhausted just talking about it.
Today we're going to talk about challenges, exhaustion, and getting through the holidays.
Real life for real families. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups happen in every family.
Jerry and I are here with tools to help you trust God, clean house, and tell the truth to ramp up the joy in your family.
You have what it takes.
It's time to become sober on purpose
For his purpose.
Hi, we're back. We hope you had a very Merry Christmas. We are recording this on the second week of January and still feeling the absolute exhaustion from heavy-duty work schedules and the Christmas holidays and kids being home and trying to pack way too much into 2 weeks.
Oh, the kids were home?
The kids were home, but you weren't home.
Yeah, it was a very busy time for us.
And that's what we want to talk about today is challenges. What do you do when you face challenges in your life, your relationships, your work, as you're newly sober? What were you doing when you were facing challenges in the beginning of sobriety?
Well, the real challenges for me in the beginning of sobriety were just fighting cravings. And what I did was, and it was mainly out of desperation, but it was a suggestion that was given to me, was to pray. And there was a number of cravings which hit me where I literally, found a place where I could not be seen for a few moments and got down on my knees, sometimes put my head on the ground and prayed for strength to get through those mind-altering cravings, those overwhelming desires to do something that made me feel comfortable in my own skin. In other words, use.
So the mind alteringness. And what I did was I was talking with another woman today who unfortunately is going through a divorce. And she says she goes in her closet and cries so that she can let it all out and not disrupt the kids. And it's not bad for the kids to see you be upset, but not all the time. And so I use the shower as my space to scream and be angry and cry and work through the things that we were processing in our marital relationship. I came across something as I was doing some writing this week, and it's Psalm 23. We all have some experience with Psalm 23 if you've been to a funeral or anything like that. And King David says, even though I walk through the valley of death, even though I walk through the valley of death. And it just struck me. This is such a line that we say all the time, like the Lord's Prayer. David didn't get out of walking through the valley of death. He did go through it. He did have to experience rough times. He lost children. He lost wives. He lost battles. He lost friends. It's one of those things that I think we experience is this loss, but we don't think about it as this is part of the challenge of growth. And as we're coming into new sobriety, new understanding in our relationship, these are the things that happen. And we're going to walk through it.
Yes, we are. We're going to get through it one day at a time.
And God gives us a prescription for getting through it, like you said, for praying. And what were you praying for?
I was just praying for the strength to endure this, knowing that it would pass. This too shall pass.
I thought it was really interesting when my sponsor told me, she said, this too shall pass goes for the good things too.
Yeah, but you're kind of changing topic. But yes.
Not changing topic, that he walks through the valley of death. He has challenges. He has exhaustion. He feels overwhelmed. And sometimes he feels happy and joyful, like when he dances in the street in front of the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. And I remember in early sobriety, as I hit the pink cloud, as we talked about in a previous episode, one of the old timers going, "This too shall pass."
I had a really rough drive in a snowstorm and all I wanted to do was give up or have somebody else drive or somebody to come and rescue me. And I think that's really, as a person who is the savior in the relationship, I also am somebody who's looking for somebody else to rescue me out of the relationship. And I came to terms with no other human is going to come and rescue me.
I would have come and rescued you.
From the snowstorm, but not from my anger, my depression, my codependency, all those types of things. You can't rescue me from that. We tried that, remember?
Yeah, no, I yes, we did try that, and I'm still trying it sometimes.
As we said in an earlier episode, it's not possible for me to get you sober. It's not possible for you to get me emotionally sober. This is work that we have to do on our own. These are challenges that we face as separate human beings.
Oh, that's a good segue into, I've come to appreciate, when people say, well, what can I do to help? I think a lot of times the best thing to do is to just not engage and to not create a negative feedback loop. And just, I was talking with somebody today. The reality is if somebody's going to go sober, if somebody's going to quit a bad habit, they're going to do it for themselves. That's been my experience. Early sobriety, I had people approaching me, were saying, oh, it's so great that you gave up that lifestyle for your children or to preserve your family. And I was never shy to say, whoa, wait a minute. I want to be clear. There was nothing righteous or noble about what I did. I did this for me, and it was a survival choice. The reality was that it had to be a selfish choice. I couldn't do it for anybody else. I suppose there's a possibility that with enough negative commentary or what's the word? What am I looking for here? If like you were to get angry enough at me,
enough negative pressure.
Yeah, that it might help influence my choice, and
it didn't. Just to answer that question.
I guess I've
done everything. I've kicked and screamed and hollered. And
the risk is, of course, that the person who's creating that negativity is positioning themselves to be viewed as the problem rather than the problem being the problem. And yet you might run away from the person who's trying to direct you to the good as opposed to run toward the good.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going with this is how do you face challenges, not just sobriety challenges, but how do you face challenges and how do we face challenges now that we're not using mood altering, that we're not trying to hide, do we turn around from the journey and say, I'm not going to do it? Or do we proceed and say, this is a challenge, I can get through it?
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of times we take the fear-based choice. I know I do. I've always wanted to kind of be my own business and run, and not to say what I knew what that was going to be, but to work for myself and to gain all the fruits from my labor. And that's a really scary thing. And I particularly as the primary monetary provider for this family, to be able to take that leap of faith and to make the risk, I haven't found the courage or the direction to do that. I've seen lots of people in my life who will say, God led me here, and maybe he did. But the majority of the times I see that, it turns out, bad, or it doesn't last very long, and there's very little good from my vantage point that came from it. So discernment on these things, I think, is also very, very important, and I shouldn't be talking about it because I don't have a lot of experience with discernment. I do have some. There's been some very clear direction in my life. However, when I follow those things, they tend to turn out relatively well, and there tends to be a lot of lessons that come from it, positive lessons and life lessons, and usually prosperity.
Well, and tell them about why you got hired on at Coke. I think that's a great story.
Why I got hired on?
Why you chose to leave your previous profession and go to Coke. Or it was really, I don't want to spoil it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering if we have the same point.
Well, I know what you told me.
All right. Well, tell me if this is what you remember. The reason I gave up my profession as a culinary person was because depression in 2008. And yes, I'll call it a depression, one that we never got the opportunity to finish. It rocked the restaurant industry where we were so heavily. I thought to myself, and I began my study into economics and monetary policy at that point too, because it blindsided me. And I considered myself an intelligent person, and I would have thought that I would have seen this coming, and I didn't. As I began to dig into the mechanics of an economy and of monetary policy, I started to realize that, holy cow, this correction which is taking place is really big, and it's going to be bad, and people are going to cut out as much discretionary spending from their lifestyle as possible in an effort to weather the storm. Now, for the majority of my culinary career, I had always thought that people have got to eat, and therefore this is a safe occupation to be in as far as longevity and job security. Well, what I realized during 2008, 2009, 2010 was, people have to eat, but they don't have to eat at a restaurant for a 500% markup on the product that they're buying. An opportunity with Coca-Cola came around. I turned it down, and it came around again, and I turned it down. It came around the third time, and I was starting to make these connections, and I thought to myself, this company has endured the last depression. Odds are they'll endure the next one. So that's why I left. Is that what you remember?
No, what you said to me was, what I remember at the time was you said the opportunity was there, and I thought, what the heck? Let's just throw in. I need something more to provide for my family, and I also need a better time frame to be available for my children because they were going to school. So you were working at the time when they were coming home and still asleep when they were leaving for school. The restaurant industry just does not work that way. And you said, okay, I'm just going to throw the towel and put the application in, see how it goes.
Well, I definitely remember thinking to myself, the hours can't be any worse than what I'm working now. Little did I realize.
They weren't in the first part of that. What I'm kind of thinking about some challenges, especially in early sobriety, for any marriage is sometimes you just have to step in and give it a try. I mean, we did that with when we still were living separately, of trying to have lunch together after church, trying to play some soccer in the field. You just have to give it a try. And like you said, with the Coca-Cola job, it just kept swinging back through the door and swinging back through the door.
Yeah, it just kept coming up. In hindsight, I realize now that the reason it kept coming up is because it was really hard work. And, sales positions are difficult. That's why salesmen make decent money.
But how did you prepare yourself for the journey? How did you say, I'm ready to step out of this profession that I've done for this long because I need a change?
I think in my mind, I probably did a pros and cons list. And I never really thought that this would be something that I had to do for the rest of my life, or that there was no coming back to the culinary world. I just decided to take a chance. And I didn't see a lot of downsides to it because I knew how to get hired on at restaurants. I mean, that part of me doesn't just go away. So I just, really the economic story is a huge portion of it. There was all of those gears turning in my mind. I was thinking for the long run, I needed more skills than to be a chef.
And so what companions and guides and people were you working with when you took the challenge, when you said, okay, I'm going to step up and do something completely different?
I don't think anybody, honestly. I think I just made it up in my mind and went for it.
Well, I think you had a sponsor, you were going to AA, you were showing up at church, you were talking to other people about it. I've never seen you do a challenge, do anything different without investigating.
I think I do remember talking to my sponsor, because one of the major suggestions in early sobriety is to not make any major life changes. And I do believe I talked to my sponsor about it, but he had been encouraging me to get out of the restaurant industry anyway because of all the drugs and alcohol that were around there. And I remember countering him with it and saying, well, what about this major life changes? And he was like, yeah, but this is a different circumstance than that because of, the lifestyle that's being led there. And in hindsight, I don't think he had a experience because in the particular area certainly of life changes and of early sobriety, he had plenty of experience. However, you can get drugs and alcohol wherever you are, no matter what you're doing. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, you'll find it. So the fact that it was available didn't make it any more or less difficult I don't believe. So he supported my decision. I think a good way to wrap up this podcast would be to talk about the 9th step promises, which are in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's page 78. I read them a lot. There was a time where I read them every day. But one of the lines in there says, the fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. That took a long time before I started to have any satisfaction that was a true promise. By no means did the entire fear of people or of economic insecurity leave me. Clearly, I mean, if I'm not willing to make the leap of faith and go into a business venture on my own, obviously I'm not there. And there's certainly people that I'm still intimidated by. But for the most part, it has left me. I do believe that God will provide and God will give me the strength that I need to work in an effort that will provide my family with what I consider to be a suitable lifestyle. I heard it said once long ago that I used to think I had a money problem, and then I quit drinking. And turns out, the money was never the problem. It was...
I think one of the huge challenges that couples face is trust, because there has been a lot of lying underneath the financial status. It's a huge challenge in how you set that back up again and how you trust each other. And there may have been money struggles, because there were times when I was so thankful that people were inviting us over for dinner, or we had programs to go to where there was food, or there were folks who were saying, come raid my freezer for whatever leftover elk we had, because there just wasn't money there. And we haven't had to worry about that for a long time. It wasn't just drug use. We had other issues going on, and I certainly had some spending habits that were not super positive on how we were making that happen. So the fear of other people and economic insecurity has been a big challenge we have overcome. And again, it is just like King David said, we walked through the valley of death, but the Lord was with us. His rod and his staff comforted us, and we found a way out, but not without walking through it.
Yeah, the last line in the promises is, we will realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
And that has been a big piece of that. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, as it says in Psalm 23, to trust that factor is going to be there. And we still face challenges. I don't think we're going to end facing challenges while we're on this side of
Don't be so negative.
That's part of life. And I think if we didn't have challenges, we wouldn't have growth. We wouldn't keep growing. And so the question I think really stands is, how are you going to face those challenges in 2019? How are you going to prepare yourself? What companions and guides do you need to do that? And how are you going to stay motivated? And staying motivated is another piece we'll tackle later on.
Surely you will meet some of us as you trudge the road to happy destiny.
How are you going to face your challenges in 2019? We are anxious to hear that from you. We have a Sober on Purpose Facebook group that we would love for you to join. We also get questions by email, which is Tanya@thejoyousfamily.com. But our biggest challenge right now is
reviews. Yeah, we could really use some iTunes reviews. And if you go to...
What?
I don't know.
Okay, so iTunes, it is really simple on iTunes. If you scroll down and it says available episodes, and then it gives you a line to do reviews, give us some stars. We'd really love 5 stars and a few comments. Reviews, we're getting almost desperate for reviews. That's a big 2019 challenge. Do we want to set up for how many reviews we'd like in the first quarter?
Yes, we would like to see by the end of this first quarter at least 750 reviews.
Oh, please. If we could get 30 reviews in the first quarter, that would be awesome. That's only 1% of you that are listening. So if we could get 30 reviews, that would be so awesome. And iTunes is the big daddy. It really is. Everywhere else is great, but iTunes is really what matters.
Somehow with the tracking metrics, if iTunes reviews matter the most, and it will just put our name out there, make us come up sooner in searches, and help others to hear us who might be looking for voices of people who suffer in the same way.
Yes, just some hope. And one of the things we keep forgetting to end with is we really do believe in trusting God, cleaning house, and telling the truth. If you want to get on our email list, that's what we do every week is we kind of pin down the podcast a little bit more in an email and a blog. Please go over to thejoyousfamily.com. Sign up for our email. We have a little box on there that you can sign up for the email. It's only once a week. It's really short. It won't take you any time to read, but it kind of ties together everything we've been talking about here. Please, please, please. We are looking for those reviews. That is our challenge for 2019. We would come hold your hand and have you do them, but we don't know exactly where you are.
Yeah, let us know what you want us to talk about too in the comment section on the Facebook page.